There was certainly no consultation with UEFA, either at board level or at administration level. So it reeks of poor governance. There was no due diligence, there was no consultation, there was no transparency about any of it. And had it not been leaked by the British media, then we might not know about it now.
Laura McAllister, thanks so much for joining me. It's good to have you with us. And what an extraordinary situation. Can I just ask you first of all, what are your thoughts, Laura, about this Gianni Infantino plan to sell shares in the World Cup to private investors? First of all, what are your thoughts?
I think my thoughts are the same as the ones that were shared with the UEFA emergency meeting yesterday, that this is a fundamentally disastrous proposal, that it threatens the existence of the game that we all love on the basis that we have always organised it, that it introduces a profit motive, an unnecessary profit motive in the governance of the game. And I think when you combine all of those things, it really threatens the way in which we run football in the interests of the most important people, who are the players and the fans. Anytime you sell off a part of your organization, in this point, the crown jewels of the World Cup for men and women, then you threaten introducing very different motivations and objectives, because clearly shareholders have to have a return on their investment,
Yeah.
whereas a not for profit like FIFA and UEFA invests the money back in the game. So, for all of those reasons, we were all fundamentally opposed.
And then you throw in the fact that it was planned behind the backs of all the governing bodies of world football.
Well, look, this was a unilateral intervention by the president and FIFA, and actually not by all of FIFA, I don't think, because hardly anybody knew about it. There was no consultation with the FIFA vice presidents. There was certainly no consultation with UEFA, either at board level or at administration level. So it reeks of poor governance. There was no due diligence, there was no consultation, there was no transparency about any of it. And had it not been leaked by the British media, then we might not know about it now. So, of course, all of that is a poor demonstration of governance standards. Um, it made it relatively easy for us in UEFA, of course, to stand up and be counted,
Mm.
because we, as a confederation, all 55 nations were prepared to sign up for a threat of a boycott, knowing that this would be inherently damaging to everything that we believe in and
Mm.
everything we care about in our sport.
And it's a reasonable summary, isn't it, to say that it was very underhand, and the plan, it now looks dead in the water, doesn't it, Laura?
Well, I hope so, but not quite yet, because we've seen the statement from FIFA overnight about an attempt to clarify the FFE project. But really, clarification is not what it's about. I mean, the fundamentals are wrong. The minute you introduce private equity, it literally alters the ways in which we, as custodians of the game, make decisions about the future of the game. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. I
Mm.
mean, we cannot imagine a situation where there is an equitable distribution of development funds when you have private equity involved, because they would happily ride roughshod over the smaller players in this equation. We in football have always prioritized the growth of the game for girls and boys, for men and women, for countries that are poorer in their development process than others, because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. But I think once you have a private equity component, then you can no longer guarantee that there will be a fair sharing of the resources that football brings in.
Yes, I mean, you say not quite dead, but we've got UEFA voting unanimously. We've got the Asian federations. We've got CONCACAF. I mean, the numbers are there. This is going to sink.
I very much hope so, but what would make sense now would be for FIFA to act decisively, as we did yesterday, and tell us that they'll withdraw this proposal, because it's clear that there is a rising tide of discontent and anger around the
Mm.
proposal. You've mentioned CONCACAF and the AFC, the Asian Federation, and also ourselves. It's not just about accumulating votes against; it's about the mood amongst the football community. And I think we've made it very, very
Mm.
clear that this is a step too far, that it's unacceptable, and that it changes the nature of how we govern football. At the end of the day, John, we're custodians of the game. We do our best to improve the standard of football in every sense and its good health, but we hand
Mm.
it over to the next generation intact. Well, selling off parts of it means that you have an undermining of everything that football governance has ever been about.
You talk of anger, Laura. Were you angry? I'm talking about feelings now. Football has a lot to do with feelings. How did you feel?
Yes, I don't mind saying that I was angry. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a fan. You know, I've been a Cardiff City fan and a Wales fan since I was 2 years old, and I still go and watch my club as a ordinary fan. So you know, of course, I feel passionately about fans' voices and fans not being outpriced out of the game. And I'm a former player, so I know exactly how the players who would be lining up in the Under 20 Women's World Cup and the European qualifiers for the Women's World Cup feel at the moment, because there
Mm.
is uncertainty around. But quite frankly, we had no choice. This was a problem made by FIFA that we've had to respond to. And the power of European football means the threat of a boycott was the only measure we could take that was commensurate with the scale of the proposal that was being put forward, the
Mm.
disastrous proposal. So, yes, of course, we feel angry because we shouldn't be put in this position. But I hope now we've sent a very, very strong message back to FIFA saying that we won't sell off the game. It doesn't belong to us to sell
Mm.
off. And we will stand up for the fans and the clubs and the players and make sure that the game is governed properly in the future.
And the offer of 20, 30 million to FAs if they voted for this plan, that's been called bribery. But we've just heard the UK Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, saying that Infantino is the wrong man to lead the organisation. Does Andy Burnham have a point?
Well, it's not Andy Burnham's decision and it's not my
Indeed.
decision. It's a decision of the 211 different national associations who would vote in an election next
Mm.
year. Um, I guess the key consideration now as we approach that election period is whether we regard the current president as being the one who can take us forward in an
Yeah,
ethical and balanced and sustainable way. But that's an issue for the federations. They will decide where they cast their votes. They will
it
decide
is.
whether they put up alternative candidates
Yeah.
against the incumbent president. And I think the series of events that have taken us to where we are this week suggest that that will be the case now.
Right. I'm asking you, you're entitled to your opinion. You set out the constitutional position. In your view, is Infantino the wrong man for the job now? You're allowed to
Well,
have your opinion.
Well, I've got lots of opinions, but I've also got office that I have to respect as well, and the
Mm.
views of the people that we represent in UEFA will definitely come to the fore in the coming weeks. But I just repeat the fact that we need ethical leadership that puts football and the key stakeholders in football, the players and the fans first. And
Yes.
any candidate who can guarantee that, who can act accordingly on those principles, would get my support, and I think the support of most federations.
Right. Well, let's put it this way. Gianni Infantino has not lived up to the kind of standards you set out very clearly there. He has to make a case for continuing in that job. He's got to do more, show more than anyone has seen so far. That would be fair, and every reason to doubt that that is possible. I think that's also fair, isn't it?
I think that's a fair take, and this is an opportunity for the president to show that he is wedded to those principles of developing the game in a proper, equitable, sustainable way,
The
and
record's not very good
that's
on
what
that,
we all
Laura.
want in football.
Yeah.
Um, that's not my responsibility now. That's the responsibility of the president to determine whether he can do that and convince people to support him in an election.
Okay, just a word on the way this story came out. The Times, Martin Ziegler, he reported this story. He was one of the first with it. It's his exclusive story. Now he's reporting that yesterday, FIFA issued a brief to possibly expand the World Cup to 64 teams. Now, this isn't it surely meant for the eyes of private investors looking for bigger profits? And what do you make of that?
Well, it's in the same vein. You know, this is a proposal that has had no evidenced basis of consultation that is being pushed through very quickly. Um, Regardless of people's views as to the appropriate number of national teams in a World Cup, there needs to be a serious consultation around things like the match calendar, player welfare, you know, the number of games that players will play, and of course the quality of the tournament. And all of these are really major considerations for all of us in football. So, you can't rush any decisions on these things. And I
No.
think if you are following a proper governance code, then you prepare the evidence, you prepare the rationale, you present it to each of the confederations who will take different positions on this.
Mm.
UEFA would take a different position to CAF in Africa, of course. But nevertheless, it's a decision that should be made in a measured way, in a considered way over time, and with proper evidence ahead of it, not rushed through in any way at all.
Yeah, but the motive of extracting maximum profits. There was more than a whiff of this during the World Cup just a couple of weeks ago, and this plan absolutely reeks of that idea. And you'll understand because you're a football fan as well as involved in football governance. To so many fans, this thing stinks, Laura, doesn't it?
Well, the first thing I would say is we need a much more powerful voice for fans. We're trying to do that in UEFA now, with Football Supporters Europe integrated into our committee. So they give us their opinions on everything we do, whether that's stadiums and choice of venues or the safety issues or sustainability of events. So I think that's a really important preliminary. But, as I said a moment ago, we should be making decisions based on the sustainability of the game and the fairness
Mm,
of the game to every stakeholder, including fans and players. It's very easy to just talk about how much commercial return you get on a bigger tournament or how much broadcast revenue and so on. But those are only considerations, they're not the primary ones. The most important consideration in every football decision should be the people who matter most, the fans and the players. And I hope that we always do that in UEFA, but um, it's been my anchor in everything that I've tried to do whilst I've been involved with the organisation of football.
yeah, and just in passing, because you touched on this a little earlier, it is worth recognising, isn't it, the work of journalists like Martin Ziegler who brought this to light, and when they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I've always engaged with the media in a way that maybe some involved in football don't, because I think they offer a really constructive challenge to everything we do. And obviously, exposing important stories like this is part of it, but also asking us to justify decisions that we make. So for me, it's always been a very complementary relationship. But I appreciate some people find that more threatening. But I think there's a really strong place for the media to ask the questions that maybe we're not asking ourselves. And if we approach that in the right spirit, then it strengthens the media, but it also strengthens the way we govern football.
Do you think the loss of trust after all of this and the wounds in football can they ever be healed now? Do you think?
I hope so. Just as I hope that there won't be a boycott of any tournaments, because I hope that won't be needed. But there will be some repair work needed because this has really challenged the confederations. I know there were a lot of emotional people yesterday in our meeting because it does strike at the very heart of everything we believe in as custodians of football. So there is ground to repair. But I hope that FIFA will reconsider the way in which it's operated over the FFE project, but more generally as well, and at least make it clear that they understand that the most important people in football are not us as governors, but the fans and the players and those who run it at grassroots level.
Laura, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.